active citizen.
Eintracht Frankfurt plans to have things their way when they clash with the giants of German football Bayern München. They believe a win is more exciting on home ground, while the Bavarians are gunning for strictly 3 points to settle at the top of the table. This is the Bundesliga, football as it's meant to be. Catch the superb contest between Eintracht Frankfurt and Bayern München on Saturday 9 December at 3 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
It's the celebration of the century, and you're invited. We've already given away almost 3 million rand with 56 daily vouchers won. Buy a new Ford before 31 December and you could win a 50,000 rand voucher or the grand prize of us paying for your new Ford. Visit your nearest Ford dealer today. T&Cs apply. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Well, last week, news broke that the National Student Financial Aid Scheme had told Parliament that due to budget cuts by the National Treasury, more than 87,000 university students stand to lose their funding, and many have raised fears around not being funded in the upcoming financial year. Now, you'd remember that we've been taking a number of calls from not only students and parents of those who are on NSFAS funding and have been affected, but also those that have raised concerns about what exactly the upcoming year then will hold in store. We still, of course, have the issue of whether those who are not paid their stipends for 2023, whether those are going to be reimbursed. You'd remember stories of students going to write their exams hungry because NSFAS had not given them the money, and many who had to face threats of evictions from their accommodation, again due to unpaid bills. Ishmael Mnisi is the current spokesperson for the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. Ishmael, good morning to you. Thank you for your time this morning.
Cathy, good morning to you and to SAFM listeners.
Nkosinathi Mabilane is the SRC president at UNISA. Nkosinathi, good morning.
Morning to you and morning to the listeners.
Ishmael, let's perhaps just begin with the role that you're playing at NSFAS right now. Have you been seconded to NSFAS as the spokesperson, or are you speaking on NSFAS in your capacity as the Department of Higher Education spokesperson?
Well, Cathy, I am officially appointed as the NSFAS spokesperson with effect from the 1st of December. So I am speaking on behalf of the scheme at the moment.
Okay, so you've moved then from the Department of Higher Education.
Correct, Cathy.
Okay, all right. Thanks for that clarity, Ishmael. It was important for me to sort of get that out of the way. Nkosinathi, let me begin by giving you an opportunity to at least give us a sense of what has been happening when it comes to the funding of students. We've wrapped up the academic year in effect. If there's still people at universities, this is probably then going to be the last week before things fully close next week. But how do we wrap up the academic year when it comes to the funding of students? Where do things stand currently?
Thank you very much. Look, we wrap up the year with many of our students still under distress, given that they are yet to receive their book allowances and living allowances from NSFAS. We've got over 120,000 students that are affected by this at the University of South Africa alone. And this is because of the dysfunctional system that NSFAS has placed of direct payment, with also students being unable to get a hold of their apps, which they must go through a company called Co-Invest, which is the distributor of these allowances. This company's got a dysfunctional system and a dysfunctional app of distribution. So many of our students have just wrapped up writing exams without having all of those resources. And the future is a bit bleak for them because we don't even know if they were able to perform well, given that they did not have the proper support throughout the entire year. So it does not look well for our students. We also can't promise on what the state of our students will be in the coming year.
So as things stand, 120,000 students still waiting for book and living allowances.
Yes, that's the figure that we have.
Right.
I think they've only paid about 55,000 students, but the rest have not been paid. So the figure we have currently is that over 100,000 students are still affected and have not received their study allowances and living allowances.
All right. Ishmael, let me come back to you then and give you a chance to let us know from NSFAS's behalf what has been happening. There've been lots of different reasons given for why students weren't paid. We had issues of technologies. We have, the procuring of service from these service providers that, some of their work was then put on hold. But in the midst of it, students have been bearing the brunt.
Thank you very much, Cathy, to Nkosinati's remarks as well. But let me just go back a bit, Cathy, in relation to UNISA in particular. You'll recall that sometime in September, the Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, Prof. Nzimande, addressed the media and the public, giving an update on the processes of onboarding by institutions. And amongst those institutions which were not doing well, UNISA was topping the list. If I recall well, at that time, it was standing at almost 60% of students who onboarded the new NSFAS payment system. And he did at the time, the minister raised concern about the implication of that process. Now, subsequent to that, the NSFAS sent its officials to UNISA to try and expedite the processes of onboarding for a simple reason, to avoid exactly what Nkosinati is raising now as a challenge, and a challenge of which could have been avoided had the processes of onboarding been completed. We have institutions that are 90% now, 100% compliant, where they do not have such kind of challenges. However, we note that if Nkosinati raises this, it would be challenges that, as a result of the lack of onboarding, something that they would clearly know about, and also something that we also predicted would happen if institutions are not responsive to the call that was made at that particular time. It is, I must also say, Cathy, that it is unfortunate, honestly, that we should be sitting with that situation at the moment in December, whilst institutions will be closing and whilst we are preparing for the opening of the beginning of the 2024 academic year.
So, Ishmael, are you saying that it is UNISA's fault that these students were not onboarded?
The onboarding process comprises of the following, Cathy. Our officials, either through the payment agencies, would go to institutions that have been to help student board, and students as well have an opportunity using their electronic gadgets to verify themselves. Now, it is not a two-way stream. NSFAS provides the platform and the guidelines on how students must onboard, and students must play their role. Now, if one part or party to this does not play its role, we are now bound to have this problem that we are having. So our view is that not all the students did their part, and that's why we are sitting with the problem. And that is why a number of these students who onboarded have been paid at the moment.
Okay. Nkosinathi, is that true?
Look, onboarding should be done by NSFAS, and what I know as the co-invest, which is the distributor of these allowances, because the institution, from what we have been told, is that they've sent the database to NSFAS on how many students are there and how many students should get what. So the system of boarding should be done by them and the company which is responsible for distributing of these funds. The challenge, however, is the students who try to onboard themselves have found it very difficult to operate the co-invest app, which was dysfunctional and does not operate or does not even recognize their credentials once they start trying and onboarding themselves. So we've got many systematic challenges that are created there, and students are now blamed for these self-created problems that NSFAS and this company have created there.
So then how do you solve it now, Nkosinathi? What is needed? Because the sense that I get from Ishmael is that he's saying, in order for those students to be paid, the university has to step in, or the students have to step in and onboard themselves.
Absolutely. I know the institution has taken steps of communicating to the students via emails to let them know that there is a process which is being taken of onboarding, and so that has been communicated to the students. So we are then waiting for that. But the other problem that we are having is that there's many of our students who are also defunded. So we also have a situation where students must then reapply, and that information has not really been told to them that you must now reapply for NSFAS because they were defunded. So we've got those challenges of students who are being defunded, and then we're waiting for NSFAS replies on all of these students who have been defunded. Then there's also the process of onboarding and KYC.
So Ishmael, for the students that are defunded, as Nkosinathi describes it, have you informed them all of the fact that they will not be receiving NSFAS funding?
Okay, Cathy, I will explain the issues of disqualifications rather than defunding, because there's a two difference in between the two. What I know is that there are students who have been disqualified or who do not qualify anymore to receive NSFAS, and I'll give the reasons why. But before that, just to clarify this issue of the onboarding, Cathy, the onus is for the students to onboard, and we are sending officials and our pay agencies to institutions to assist them. When we discover that some students might be having challenges, that is a decision that NSFAS took to send personnel in those institutions, arranging with the SRCs, arranging with the management of the university, that they will be there to assist each and every student. But there has been non-responsiveness, I must say, from some of the institutions. And later, it is at that point when students realized that they are not being paid because of they've not onboarded, they now push the blame again to say, well, it is NSFAS's problem. But the students have a responsibility as well to ensure that if they've been approved for payment, they do follow due processes for the monies to be paid. Because NSFAS at the end of the day must account for each and every money that it is paying to students. So we expect them to work with us, and we are still committed as NSFAS to ensure that all those that are qualifying get assisted. But when it comes to the issues of defunding, I
right,
honestly
Ishmael,
say, I must say,
Ishmael,
yes, can we hear me?
I'm going to ask you to pause there. I just want to take the latest news headlines. We'll continue the conversation in a moment. It's 10:30.
And in the headlines, the National Student Financial Aid Scheme spokesperson Ishmael Mnisi says NSFAS is not experiencing a student accommodation crisis yet, as alleged by the Organization Undoing Tax Abuse OUTA. This comes as OUTA completed its investigation into student accommodation tenders at the financial aid scheme, and the findings caused concerns. In other news, ANC veteran Dr. Mavuso Msimang says reaching the decision to quit the ANC was painful. Msimang has announced last night that he was resigning from the party that he had served for more than 6 decades. And the Free State provincial government says plans are in place to launch the R30 corridor development in Majabeng in an effort to create job opportunities in the area. More on these and other stories at the top of the hour.
The rand is currently trading at 18 rand 94 to the dollar, 23 rand 82 to the pound, and 20 rand 42 to the euro. Markets in Asia ended lower. The JCE is also lower in mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe are flat this hour. Gold is trading at $2,032, platinum at $901 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $77.35 a barrel.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, we're looking at some of the challenges that NSFAS has been facing and really then trying to see what this will mean for the upcoming academic year. Ishmael Mnisi now speaks on behalf of NSFAS. Nkosinathi Mabilane is the SRC president at UNISA. So Ishmael, you were speaking to the issue of those students that are no longer funded, which have been disqualified from receiving funding by NSFAS.
Yes, Cathy, I wanted to clarify the issues of disqualifications, of how it happens. Back again in September, the minister explained the 3 categories of students who at the time appealed and for funding, who initially were disqualified. We had the hybrid applicants, whom in the main were continuing students, of which they were disqualified because the registration data from the old to the new system was not completed. And that has since been corrected, meaning that the returning students whose data was now available for NSFAS, they were all paid their allowances. And now, again, the other category are those that are from the missing parental relationships. Now, this, Cathy, is a problem because we have identified students who provided falsified information about their parental details. In the initial applications that they have made, they would include, they will say that Ishmael Mnisi is my father, he is not working, and upon verification with SARS, the Department of Home Affairs and SASSA, then NSFAS discovers that firstly, Ishmael might not be the immediate father, but if it's a guardian, we then expect them to upload documents that suggest that Ishmael is the guardian and therefore stand the test to be, considered as the parent, and then the application would be completed. Now, majority of the students did not provide such information. That's why Nkosinathi will use the term defunded. It is not correct to use that term, but they did not qualify in terms of the qualification criteria of NSFAS. Should they have provided us with the necessary documentation as we requested, such applications would have been considered by the appeals tribunal of NSFAS. So I would make an example, Cathy, if ever such students exist from UNISA, that even as we are busy with this call, I would arrange with Lebo that we get about 2 or 3 of them that we can instantly verify here online to check what the status of those applications are. Then I can even in real time be able to give feedback before the end of the show, just to make an illustration of the challenges that we are having with some students within UNISA. So I would wish them, majority of them could call us and then so that we can look at that. Now, the last category, Cathy, of which also has been addressed, are those ones that the data did not arrive from the university. And in this instance, you find that a student has applied to various universities, gets accepted at UNISA. However, the system is not updated to indicate that the student is no longer at a particular university. Now they have moved to UNISA. Now that process of submission of data has been delayed, and some of the students then got affected as a result of that. Now, since this data has been updated, a majority of students who qualifies have been qualified, and they're supposed to be receiving their allowances. However, the challenge still remains, Cathy, the issues of onboarding. Even if you would have passed all these processes, but you have not migrated, you have not onboarded yourself, money lies in your account, in the reserves in your account there, which awaits you to identify yourself so that this money could be paid.
It sounds to me, Ishmael, that there needs to be a lot more done to support students with whatever administrative processes that they need to comply with in terms of ensuring that the documents that NSFAS needs or universities need are in order.
Yes, Cathy, you are very correct. We have identified that need, and proactively so. That's why there are officials of NSFAS that are sent to institutions at the beginning of the year, and once in 2 months for them to visit institutions and engage with students who might be experiencing problems. And we have also, as part of their responsibility, the paying agencies have been mandated as well to play that role, and continuously we are receiving updates from them in terms of the onboarding of students and even instances where there are challenges. But I believe that more still needs to be done.
But you can hear that, even though the agencies have been tasked with that mandate, it's not really happening in the way that it should. And I remember when I was in university, the NSFAS queues were always the longest, and often people just struggled with understanding everything that was required of them and systemically what they needed to do. So having people visit institutions of higher learning once every 2 months, yes, it matters, but given the fundamental changes that NSFAS has undergone over the last 2 or 3 months, surely a lot more needs to be going into support for the change.
Yes.
Can I quickly answer?
Yes, you can come in, Nkosinathi.
What Mr. Ishmael is also missing is that students have got a challenge with the onboarding system itself. We've got an app that does not work, which students are said they must use. And those are the basic challenges that students have to face while they're trying to onboard, is that this app does not recognize their IDs, or it malfunctions in any other ways. So the challenges of onboarding are not that students are not doing it or don't want to do it, but because they know that they've got money in their accounts. So they really want to have access to this. The challenge is just the app seems to not be working how it's supposed to be working.
Ishmael?
No, thanks, Cathy. I think I accept the point that more still needs to be done to assist our students to understand the changes that are rapidly taking place within the system, and also considering what Nkosinathi is saying in terms of the technologies that we are using. We have, met with USAF and the representatives of our TVET principals to discuss on more support that we need to give to institutions, given the fact that it's very apparent that the system is not understood. At some stage, we have even discovered that even the institutions themselves fail to understand and explain these rapid changes that are taking place. And more resources, I must indicate, Cathy, from NSFAS will be provided going forward to institutions. And we are also looking at establishing NSFAS offices within our institutions that will be there almost on a permanent basis to be able to deal with such kind of challenges
Sure.
that are there. And I must accept, being an NSFAS beneficiary myself, TEFSA in particular, I know how daunting it was and how long the queues were those years, Cathy, in our institutions to get a loan for us to study. So with that appreciation, we would definitely, as NSFAS, do more to work together with our institutions, to work together with our SRCs, to capacitate them on the processes so that they can also be agents of
Sure.
exchange to
And
students or information so that they can assist the students directly and liaising with us.
all right. And certainly, Ishmael, one would have thought that this is something that is done before and not after the fact, because you would have saved some of these students so much trouble and really difficulty that they've had to go through over the last couple of months. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm back with more after this.
The Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies invites interested individuals and stakeholders to submit written comments on the SABC bill. The bill seeks to repeal the Broadcasting Act of 1999 to regulate the continued existence of the SABC, to provide its governance, to amend the ICASA Act of 2000 and the Electronic Communications Act of 2005. For more information, contact the Portfolio Committee of Communications and Digital Technologies by emailing sabcbill@parliament.gov.za, directed to Hanjiera Sali.
Various African outfits will display a great brand of cricket this festive season. Kenya, Ghana and Cameroon will play their hearts out in the East-West qualifier of the BNP Group Africa Cup T20 2023. They will all endeavor to clinch one of 4 remaining spots. This is the journey to the finals of the BNP Group Africa Cup T20 2023. Witness the thrilling action from 5 to 10 December, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, we continue the conversation on the Talking Point. I'll be taking your calls on 086 000 2032 if you want to put questions through to Ishmael Mnisi of NSFAS, 086 000 2032. On the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107. Ishmael, you of course have also been in the news, and this is really around the warning coming through from OUTA about the looming crisis when it comes to student accommodation, and the accreditation that NSFAS has was supposed to have issued by now to potential suppliers of student accommodation that has not taken place.
Well, Cathy, in as far as student accommodation is concerned, and the report from OUTA, I think it's important that we take this opportunity to update the public regarding the work that is underway at NSFAS. About 19 TVET colleges now are set as pilot sites for the implementation of the accreditation of private service providers, which will assist us to augment on the capacity of the availability of beds that are currently there. And also about 17 universities will form part and parcel of this. As we speak, NSFAS is engaged in discussions with these TVET colleges and universities. Today we are at the Tshwane University of Technology, of which provides the majority of residential areas in our universities, to discuss with them these issues of accommodation and how can private accommodation providers be integrated in the system. And I must indicate, Cathy, that since our engagement yesterday, the numbers of beds available are significantly increased, and we're hoping that even in our engagement today with TUT, we'll get more additional beds available. The
But
challenge has
Ismail,
been,
why
yeah.
must it always take a crisis? Why must things always get to a point where, their statements, their alarm bells going off before before progress is made? These are things that should have been done. It didn't have to result in outer raising the alarm and then seemingly creating some kind of urgency around it.
Cathy, let me correct you there. It is not outer which raised an alarm. It is NSFAS which went to the portfolio committee and provided an update in as far as this is concerned. What outer did out of our own presentation as NSFAS, it then used that as an opportunity as well to give its own report, which I must say that much as it's appreciated, but it's also one-sided in terms of the capacity of the availability of beds that are there. Because you would appreciate that the availability of beds is also within institutions and outside. So the report that has been provided only focus on the accreditation of private accommodation. It did not take into consideration the capacity that it's within the institution. And at the appropriate time, the NSFAS will then provide details on that capacity we are talking about extensively so that it gets understood where we are and why, as NSFAS, we are saying there should not be any panic at the moment, because there's a lot that has been done, which probably it has not been appreciated at the moment.
Yeah, I want to give the benefit of the doubt, Ishmael, but famous last words, right? How many previous examples have we had of officials making similar commitments with NSFAS as an entity, and yet months later we'll sit with students who are having to navigate their way through the crisis. So I hope that you're right. I really hope that it works out well. But I guess the next 2 months are really going to be the ones to tell. Arnold, you're in Acornhoek. Good morning.
Morning, First Casey. You know me that in most cases when I'm called into a show, I always talk issues of disabilities. I should let you know that I still have issues of 2020 with NSFAS, with persons with disabilities in different institutions, especially University of Venda, whom have not been converted from NSFAS General to NSFAS Disability. One of the biggest challenges with persons with disabilities in NSFAS, there's a section called NSFAS Disability. Most of the officials whom we would have created a personal relations with are living NSFAS. And we have a challenge of staff members in universities, either from disability unit or from financial aid and NSFAS itself, who do not even understand some of the documents which are needed for someone to be either accepted or either be converted from NSFAS General to NSFAS Disability. I sent 3 emails to the spokesperson of NSFAS to back, detailing some of the challenges of which there's a particular student who went to the University of Venda in 2018, accepted, got NSFAS. This year, she's not funded because of due to medical reasons, but the shocker is that she was told that in 2018, when she did her her first year, she was not funded by NSFAS. One of the biggest challenges in terms of accommodation is corruption within universities, wherein certain officials of the universities will take money from private renters or private accommodations so that prioritize them in terms of filling spaces. So then in a large scale of numbers, you find that as persons with disabilities will have to suffer because of certain priorities need to be made for certain people. And one of the biggest challenges for us is that when you are completing even documents, because of there are two sections in terms of NSFAS when you have a disability. It's fine when you complete one part, but when you're supposed to complete what is called AX, which makes you to amend certain documents and attach medical reports, you'll find officials of the department or even NSFAS itself not understanding whether you need what is called a human assistant or mentors or assistants of 18 hours to 24 hours assistance services.
All right.
So those are some of the challenges. I've written emails since 2020 to the spokesperson. I mean, he knows me very well, including some of other issues of which he has engaged about. But our challenges is that our cases in terms of disability-wise in all institutions are not being solved
All right.
to the maximum.
All right, Arnold, I'm going to ask you to pause it there. We're going to take a break. I'm back with more of your calls, and then I'll give Ishmael an opportunity to respond.
Akwele.
Akwele.
Akweli.
Akwela.
Akwele.
Akwili.
Akwele.
Akwela. No matter how you say it, one thing's for sure, Akwele has been your trusted natural spring water and delicious flavored sparkling drink for 25 years. Celebrating 25 years of refreshment and joy. Thank you, Mzansi, for your support and making us your favorite water brand. Akwele, spreading joy for 25 years.
Individual brilliance always adds a superb vibe to the team. Sami Sohail of Malawi holds the highest batting average in 2020 internationals. Dhruv Maisuriya of Botswana is the quickest to reach 50 wickets in 2020 internationals, and Francisco Kowana of Mozambique is the first player to score a century and take 5 wickets in the same 2020 internationals. Catch these African stars in action of the BNP Group Africa Cup this December, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM. Cathy Mohlahlana on SAFM.
All right, we continue the conversation on the talking point. We're still staying with the NSFAS issue. Kwezi, good morning to you.
Good day, Cathy, and how are you?
I'm well, thank you, Kwezi.
Yes, good morning, Ismail.
Good morning, Chris.
Cathy.
Yes. Hello, Kwezi.
I am a parent, Cathy.
Okay.
And coincidentally, I am a student at Walter Sisulu University. I am familiar with the challenges that NSFAS is going through. I've been listening to Ismail for the past hour, speaking in platitude, trying to defend the indefensible. The problem, Cathy, in this country is corruption. NSFAS was running well, and there were fewer complaints when it comes to funding for student tuition, accommodation, and all of that. But the problem is that the powers that be want to have their own share of the money that are intended to finance the education of poor South Africans. And that kind of greed has landed us here today. The problem is corruption. They appointed a service provider that was going to disperse those funds. And that service provider lacks the capacity to distribute those funds to such a large number of students. That's the problem. That's the problem. So trying to defend the indefensible, we've been witnessing this kind of treatment of poor students for quite a long time. And NSFAS is almost 10 years of existence, and NSFAS could have built its own capacity to disperse those funds.
Yeah.
Let me rest my case.
All right, Kwesi. Thanks for that input. Clonipa, you're in Cape Town. Good morning.
Hi, Kitty.
Yes, good morning.
I'll get straight to the point. I don't want to take too much time. But I think I'm listening to your guest there, and he's got an answer to everything, but it's not necessarily the right answer. I'll make an example of what you're asking now, like why does everything have to be a crisis? And he says that it's not found out about the problems them. That's not the problem here. That's not the real issue. The issue is why the crisis there, whether they identified it themselves or not. That is the problem. So I don't know when he says, no, it's actually us who found it. Does it make it better because they're the one who picked it up after it's in crisis, you see? So there's no learning here. Like all these issues are issues that are there, and they're happening over and over again. It's as if there's no root cause analysis to say, let's put a corrective action. You know, a friend of mine applied for NSFAS for 2023 academic year, and he got rejected because his surname and his father's surname were different by one capital letter. There was a difference when he did an ID or something like that. And he's done so many appeals. He's made phone calls, sent emails, visited NSFAS head offices in Cape Town over and over again. And he submitted all the necessary documents, done the affidavits, all of those things, and he still got rejected anyway. So he decided he's going to give up now and apply for 2024. He applies for 2024. The system doesn't allow him to apply because of the 2023 rejection. He goes back to the offices. They say, oh, we are aware of the issue. We're going to escalate to our IT department. I mean, those are basic things. How many other students are affected by those things that don't have resources to do follow-ups and send emails and all of this? I mean, this guy's in Cape Town. What about guys in Eastern Cape who don't have access to all of these things? It's just crazy. Like, it's bad. It's bad. He might not want that.
So, Cloniped, it's almost like you have to work hard just to be able to get through and access the system.
Exactly. That is the problem. And, Katie, these are basic things. If you don't do basics, you're going to fail. It's as simple as that. These are basic things. You don't need to be a scientist to do this thing to run NSFAS. I mean, it's not the only organization that runs like this. There are other ones that they can learn from. Like, it's kind of difficult to understand what. Like they can talk, they can give you all the answers. I promise you. You can ask any different question in any angle. They will have an answer for it, but it's not the right answer. I promise.
All right, Clonipa. Thanks for calling in. Ishmael.
Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Cathy. Perhaps let me start with Clonipa whilst his issues are still fresh. The issues that I was referring to, Cathy, regarding accommodation and the question that you posed was that is there any crisis? And I said there is no crisis, and the data that was provided by OUTA, as you said, actually it's from the data that we have provided as a report, as work in progress in relation to the work that NSFAS is doing. Remember, when we go to Parliament, we account and we give them the figures of where we are in relation to the responsibilities that an entity has. So that was a report given at that particular time. And as I was saying, there is work in progress, and that is why even today there is still work that is being done to make sure that we prepare for the 2024 academic year. And in relation to Kwesi's question, again, Cathy, we have acknowledged that there is still need to be done to work on creation of capacity within NSFAS, but there is work in terms of the law that NSFAS can do, and there is work that NSFAS can subcontract to third parties to play that role. This includes the work for distribution of funds that has been given to the third parties to manage it on behalf of NSFAS. And we acknowledge that not everything went well there. That is why NSFAS today has fired its then CEO based on how these processes have been handled of the appointment of service providers to facilitate the distribution of payments. And we are well aware and concerned as well that of any instances of corruption within NSFAS, and I believe that is the approach of government to make sure that where there are instances of corruption get reported and individuals get
All right.
held accountable.
All right.
And lastly, Cathy, with Arnold, I think issues of disability, Cathy, we fully agree. We have acknowledged that there is a problem in relation to our residences accommodating persons living with a disability, and that has been captured very well in the report by the Ministerial Committee on the review of student accommodation. And currently, the buildings that are being built by institutions are accommodating the issues of people living with disabilities, including as part of our standards now, norms and standards. All the accredited buildings will need to have such a system. Thank you very much,
We're
Cathy.
going to have to leave it there. Ishmael Mnisi is the spokesperson for NSFAS and Gusinathi Mabilani, SRC president at UNISA.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Top stories this hour. Department of Health confirms placement of junior doctors, and NSFAS dismisses student accommodation crisis claims. Good morning. Health Department's Human Resources Chief Director, Dr. Luvuyo Bayeni, has confirmed that 2,146 medical practitioners have been placed for community service. This after concerns were raised that hundreds of junior doctors are still waiting to be placed for community service. The junior doctors need to complete a 1-year community service before they can practice as medical doctors. Bayeni elaborates.
I can confirm, though, that we have about 202 that we still have not notified of their placement. But what is comforting to us about the 202 that we still have not is that it's what most of them are what we refer to as late starters, which means that they will be starting anytime after the 1st of March. And as a result, we have also communicated to say, because now our priority was to ensure that those who are due to start on the 1st of January are able to know where they are going.
The National Student Financial Aid Scheme spokesperson Ishmael Mnisi says NSFAS is not experiencing a student accommodation crisis yet, as alleged by the organization Undoing Tax Abuse, OUTA. This comes as OUTA completed its investigation into student accommodation tenders at the scheme, and the findings caused concerns. The investigation revealed that out of the 497,000 beds needed for students, NSFAS has only accredited 25,000. Mnisi says there is no need to panic.
There's always a shortage of student private accommodation in South Africa. We all know that there are more students now that requires student accommodation, particularly the private ones, because the capacity of our universities and TVET colleges to accommodate all students is still insufficient. However, I must indicate that there is more work that is being done. We will, of course, provide the necessary numbers when the time arrives.
ANC veteran Dr. Mavuso Msimang says reaching the decision to quit the ANC was painful. Msimang announced last night that he was resigning from the party that he had served for more than 6 decades. He says he is pained by the large-scale poverty and other socio-economic issues plaguing South Africans while leaders live comfortably with their families. Msimang says he is deeply disappointed at how the ANC has failed the country.
It's painful. It's a huge disappointment that we have not succeeded to get the ANC to do the right thing. I want to say there are people behind there who are still working very hard at it, but I think I've reached the end of my tether.
The Free State provincial government says plans are in place to launch the R30 corridor development in Majabeng in an effort to create job opportunities in the area. Speaking on the sidelines of the presidential Imbizo, Premier Mxolisi Dukwana says Majabeng used to be a hive of activities with 30 mine shafts, which has now scaled down to less than 10. Dukwana says part of the Imbizo is to give a report back from the last year's Imbizo and have an interaction with communities.
What we are doing also is to look into about the opportunities like the gas that we have and trying to develop, for instance, we have the R30 corridor development, which will bring about the necessary investment, and we are far ahead. We will be launching that project early next year and making sure that we have a number of opportunities, not only in the EPWP, but real jobs that people will be having for a longer period.
And in the Middle East, Israeli troops say they are battling Hamas fighters in the southern Gaza's main city of Khan Yunis, where they believe a top militant leader is hiding. In a video statement, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the IDF had surrounded the home of Hamas's chief Yahya Sinwar.
Yesterday I said that our forces could reach anywhere in the Gaza Strip. Today they are encircling Sinwar's house. His house may not be his fortress, and he can escape, but it's only a matter of time before we get him.
Recapping our top story this hour, Health Department's Human Resources Chief Director, Dr. Luvuyo Bayeni, has confirmed that 2,146 medical practitioners have been placed for community service. Dineo Mutawung will bring you your latest headlines at the bottom of the hour. For SFM News, I am Nomalizo Mandela.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation. The summer season is here. That means there are more reasons for you to travel and explore Mzansi. South African Tourism, together with the greater tourism industry, are partnering to make travel more accessible and affordable. On our Tourism Thursdays feature on Beyond the Headline, we will be joined by SA Tourism to tell us more about how to travel and get to know Mzansi in a fun and affordable manner this summer season. Tourism Thursday is proudly brought to you in association with South African Tourism.
Eintracht Frankfurt plans to have things their way when they clash with the giants of German football Bayern München. They believe a win is more exciting on home ground, while the Bavarians are gunning for strictly 3 points to settle at the top of the table. This is the Bundesliga, football as it's meant to be. Catch the superb contest between Eintracht Frankfurt and Bayern München on Saturday 9 December at 3 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday. Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Hi, Cathy. This is Senzo Kumede from Durban. I'm trying to apply for NSFAS, but I was a self-paying student for the first year. So now there's a section that says study information, but I noticed that my qualification is not showing, but there's a section that says undefined. So I was trying to ask if the gentleman can clarify it. Can I use that undefined, and then they can just ask for more information on the qualification when my application went through? Thank you.
Cathy, to answer your question, why did we have to wait for a crisis? It's simply because we don't have capable people running this organization. Another thing which is happening with NSFAS, where I stay, there is a TVET college. Most of the students, because the money comes in late, they end up having to hook up with older guys so that they can have them pay and have them supply food. The young men, most of them, they end up having to do some odd jobs and some get involved in criminal activities because it takes way too long for NSFAS to provide the money. And the people that are providing accommodation, they don't really care that you haven't gotten your NSFAS yet.
Morning, Cathy, again with your SAFM listeners and producers as well. Good morning. My question remains to the spokesperson of NSFAS. Why is it that there's such a complicated process like this? Why is it that things have to move from here to there, here to there, here to there? Students have to do this, NSFAS have to do this, institutions have to do this. Everybody who applied for NSFAS, why don't you just create a database for them? Have them there in your database. They go straight. Get the student numbers, you get their acceptance letters, you get their documents, all of them that come from their parents. Then you have got SASA, you have got Home Affairs, you have got SARS. Verify those people, and then you pay money direct into the student account. Why are you having all these middlemen and these things that are so many? It's complicated the situation. That's why some students get lost in the process. Please, make things straight, ANC. It's time to do things properly. There is no other time.
Good morning, SFM. I agree with the previous caller who's asking the question that why is there a crisis at the first place? I'm also having a sister who, for the first time, was applying for varsity admission last year. Unfortunately, she wasn't taken because of her marks, but she applied at NSFAS. She qualifies for NSFAS. Currently, she's applying for next year. She was upgrading this year, so she's applying for 2024. NSFAS system does not allow her to apply because of this year's rejection, as he's stating. So why is that the case? Why NSFAS is not fixing such problems? Because they can identify such issues. Why is it taking them long to fix simple issues like this? Circular.
Hi, Cathy. Good morning to you and the SAFM audience and producers. Cathy, I say NSFAS is working. NSFAS is working. Just go to Ronald Road in Montlake in Durban. There are 3 residences. Students get picked up, but only to find that they are drunk. They drink, Katie. The street is infested with bottles. They drink up until midnight, up until the next morning. So I just don't take this thing that government is doing this, government is doing that. Things are arising from the raising up of our children. So please, man, take it up there. Just go and visit Montlake. Thank you. This is Bafana from Montlake.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen. Cathy Mohlahlana on SAFM.
Well, thank you for those contributions on the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, which was the conversation we had in the previous hour of the show. Today we're going to round it up with a bit of literature, and we're going to be looking at least what are some of the must-reads for 2023. Not from my perspective, because it would probably be very biased, but we've got the experts, at least in their own right, in studio with me. Suela Langeni is the founder of Book Capital Bookstore. Suela, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Maggie Davey is a senior editor and academic publisher at Jacana Media. Maggie, good morning.
Morning, Cathy.
And Deborah Mashiani is with a book club, Bafadi Bebumene Book Club. Deborah, good morning to you.
Morning, Cathy. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. So, firstly, let me thank you all for making time for this conversation. I have been taking a look at the list of the top 5 books that you have all sent through to the show. I must say, there is no commonality in the names or the titles at all, which I find interesting because we'll get to that in a moment. But I think just more generally, all of you have an important role within the literature sector. You have an idea of what some of the trends in the sector are. What have you seen sort of in this year when it comes to reading? Are we as South Africans reading books? If we are, what are the kind of books we are looking for? What interests us? You know, is there a typical formula for a bestseller in South Africa? Suella, I'll begin with you.
I think people, yes, we are reading. That I can definitely confirm. We are reading, and because as Book Circle Capital, we focus specifically on African literature. I think people are excited and want to read African stories. We still lean a lot more on nonfiction based on the demand. So people like to read more real stuff, more political stuff linked to our history. Even if it's fiction, it must be based on, some history of legitimate events that have happened. There's also an excitement around still memoirs. I think people want to hear people's stories. People are writing stories about their family members. People are rewriting, stories that could have been lost. We know that there's a lot of history that has been written out based on our history, but so we're seeing a lot more people writing stories about their families. And we're seeing a lot of children's books that are coming out where representations is a theme, stories about our hair, our skin, our differences are coming out. So I think, it's been an exciting year.
I'm quite fascinated by the people writing stories about their families.
Yeah.
Because one would think that, you would have interest in things like that from celebrity families or families that are well known. But when you have ordinary people writing stories about their grandparents or their mothers, and it's really it's something that's happening more and more. Why do you think that is, Suella?
I think it's because of our history, because there was a time where we didn't have the space to be able to tell our stories, and people are also wanting to retrace their steps. So one of the books on my list is The Man Who Shook the Mountains by Leslie Mofokeng. He's writing about his grandfather, who was instrumental in the Uniting Reformed Church. So it may not be like a big well-known person, but within that community he's quite well known. He made changes in the community where he was based as a minister. So the appeal is bigger than just his family. There are a lot more people there. So I think there's that curiosity about where we come from, because a lot of it also, shows you where you come from, therefore shows you your potential and inspires you to do more.
All right.
Yeah.
Maggie, how would you describe the interest that you're seeing in books?
Well, Cathy, if I knew what made a bestseller, then of course things would be a lot different. But, and I really couldn't, Suella has it summed up there, really. It is about our own stories and telling them now. I grew up in Ireland. I was born here, but grew up in Ireland. And Irish bookstores, you had to go quite a distance into the bookstore before you met books from other parts of the world. So it was all about telling Irish stories, and it still is. So, that's the exciting thing, especially for local publishers. And that's really the beauty and the hope of it, is bookstores like Suella's and everybody else who's now taking a really a passionate interest in
book clubs
and book clubs in local
so in terms of trying to read the South African market, if I come to you, Maggie, and I'm like, well, you work at Jacana, I want to write a book about the moon, you will be the first one to tell me, well, a book about the moon might not appeal to the audience that we have in this country. So what are we interested in from a publisher's point of view? What do you take? What manuscript do you take and entertain and know that I can put this out there, and there's an expectation that there'll be a couple of people that will be interested in?
Well, to go back to the moon example, it really is in the telling. So if you're telling the most extraordinary story about the moon in your voice, which is new and fresh and exquisite, then what's not to love? So it's a lot of it is in the telling. Of course, it's in the stories. We know that, bringing up stories for the first time, telling them for the first time. But I think now we've got such a rich array of voices, and that's burgeoning. And that's what we're looking for.
Yeah. Okay. Double, let me bring you in here as somebody who is the chairperson or the leader of a book club. When you get together with the rest of your book club members, who gets to decide which book is being read and when?
So in our book club, we have a system where each person recommends a book. So we are each allocated a month. Before, when we started, we said we'll read 70% fiction and then 70% fiction and 30% nonfiction. But lately we've been fighting a lot because a lot of people have been suggesting nonfiction, coming back to talking about people writing about their lives and stories. So you see the shift now. The stories are not about, people are not interested on nonfiction as much as they were before. Now, with fiction as much as before, now they're more interested in nonfiction and people's stories. So that's how we do in our club. Each person gets an opportunity to choose, and you cannot make them change their minds. You all have to read it. It doesn't matter if you love the genre or not. So that's how we keep things equal, and so that we don't have fights.
So when it comes to getting together, how consistent are people in making time to actually read books? Is it a case of that all the members have read the books, or are people just taking a cursory look through what looks like the important chapters so that we can keep up with the conversation?
Before COVID, things were running smoothly. We were consistent in everything. But after COVID, a lot of people's lives changed and were affected health-wise and stuff. So we had to loosen up some rules. So even if you have not finished reading the book, you are allowed to review it, and we give you grace. We're not as strict as before, but you are required to finish the book, reading the book by the end of the year. So you cannot escape not reading the book that was given to you. And we used to also have fines that if you haven't finished reading a book, you bring a bottle of wine so we can share. That's another way of making people to come out, get along and read the book. But mostly we don't really have to force anyone. They do it because we just brought together by the love of books, so it's easy.
And it's a great way to build a sense of community and really talk about life and share life experiences through the journey of others. So I've asked all of you, as I started off earlier, to put together a list, your top 5 reads, and help us at least, give us ideas of what we can be doing over the holidays. Suela, I'm going to kick it off with you.
Yes.
What are your top 5 reads of 2023?
So this was hard because as a bookseller, there's a lot that you get exposed to. So I had to narrow it down. So whoever that's listening and I didn't mention, don't hold anything.
So what is the criteria that you used? How did you pick your top 5?
I picked my top 5 out of the ones that I really stayed with me a lot, even after I've read it. Plus a lot of also sales, how they performed at the shop, and how many people I've heard talk about it. We monitor also a lot on social media what the trends are. So that was my rough criteria. It's not scientific. So I have 2 fiction. My first fiction is At Fire Hour by Barry Gilder. We had the honor of launching him at the shop. It's a Jacana publication, so it's a historical fiction. He's a former ambassador, I think, to Damascus, and he's an ANC stalwart. So he makes up a whole story about, it's a love story, but in the context of armed struggle. So it's very interesting. Some facts are, people are curious how much of it is true, how much of it is not true, and he it's so well researched around former writers in South Africa that are no longer alive, but so it's rich in that way. My next fiction is Jessica George Mami. She's not South African, so she's a Black British woman that writes about her story as a young woman that gets parentified quite early in life, and then she takes care of her dad, but she finds herself. It's a story about identity. It's a book I felt I could have read much younger, so it's such a beautiful book. And then the 3 nonfiction is Ruth Mompati. So Mem Ruth Mompati is also an ANC stalwart, but as we know, like a lot of the role of women in struggle was almost erased. So I'm loving books that are coming to tell us what role women played. So this book is written by Untate Wali Mungane Sorote, where he talks about her life of courage and struggle. So she sounded like such a trailblazer. You know, you reading the book, you wish like you would have met her. And then I write The Yawning Void by Mesindiwe Magona. She's, a famous South African author. This is a collection of her essays published by Vets Press. So she talks a lot about a lot of things. So if you meet her physically, she lectures you a lot. So the essays feels a lot like a lecture, but in a good way.
Yeah.
You know, she talks about, and she forces us to reflect. So she, of course, she belabors the state of the nation. She talks about the use of languages, you know, especially with our children, worried that indigenous languages are being cannibalized by English, but also just the beauty of writing, making sure that we write, because in a way, writing preserves our history, preserves our story. And then lastly is The Men Who Shook Mountains by Leslie Mufokeng. This book, because I come from I'm also from the Enkhia Kerk / Uksa, so it felt so much like going down memory lane. He even talks about the history of our hymns, the hymns we sing in church now. He connects that to the role that his grandfather played in a community called Gelexpan in the Northwest. And it's that thing you were saying, he writes him back into history, but also I think it could be a nice addition for even kids that get born into the Mufokeng family.
Yeah.
You know, where do they come from? What capacity do they have? You know, where do they come from and how much they could still do?
Wow.
Yeah.
Now you've convinced, now I want all of those books. I feel like I should read all of them. Maggie, let me come to you. Let's see how much of your list we can get through. Don't worry, if I interrupt you to take the 11:30 news headlines, we'll continue on the other side of the headlines, okay?
I didn't, I was absolutely modest to a fault.
Yeah.
And didn't choose any of Jacana titles.
Okay.
But I'm going to bring one in.
Sure.
Just now.
So what was the criteria then that you used in your selection process?
Well, really, just books that I couldn't. As what did you say, Suella? That stayed with you.
Yes.
With that kind of feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically that was it. The first one was Johnny Steinberg's Winnie and Nelson.
Yes.
I just thought that it's one of the best biographies that I've ever read in my life. The detail, the attention given to so many aspects of their lives, and just even attempting to write about these two people and having done that beautifully. Yeah, it's my book of the year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Apart from all the Chicana books,
yes,
which are all my books of the year. And then Dilla Time, Jay Dilla. You know, I didn't know so much about Jay Dilla.
Okay.
And, I listened to the Roots back in the day. It dates me so much now. And I even, so I knew a bit about Jay Dilla. But here really is, between the covers of a book, how Jay Dilla inserted time, a new beat of time into how music is scored and played nowadays. And in fact, that's how the book is laid out. It's laid out chronologically and then in terms of timing and beats. So, they always used to say Frank Sinatra put an extra, he could carve out an extra bit of time in a song. And now Jay Dilla put an extra bit of time into a piece of music. So that was extraordinary. Killing Thatcher, Rory Carroll. He used to be the Guardian correspondent out here many years ago. It is the most beautifully, brilliantly investigated and told story about an IRA bomb in Brighton in 1984, I think, when they tried to kill Thatcher, and then they didn't, and they killed some Tory ministers, and it's not a British-Irish thing at all. I mean, of course, it is that story, but it's framed as who planted the bomb.
And it's done very well globally as well,
Very
right?
well.
It's done phenomenally well, yeah.
So, I mean, Rory is still with The Guardian in Ireland now.
All right. I'm going to pause you there, Maggie. We're going to continue with the rest of the list in a moment. I hope you are getting inspiration, right? If you haven't picked up a book in a while, like somebody in the studio who I will not mention, you just have to put one and two together, right? Because the two guests obviously have. So that leaves maybe one other person who's behind the microphone currently who hasn't. So we're all getting inspiration to do a little bit better. It's 11:30, time for the latest news headlines.
For the headlines at 11:30, I am Dino Motaung. Good morning. Health Department's Human Resources Chief Director Dr. Luvuyo Bayeni has confirmed that 2,146 medical practitioners have been placed for community service. In other news, Public Works and Infrastructure Minister Sihle Zikalala says he's asking Chinese companies to invest in South African infrastructure. And a state of emergency has been declared in the Seychelles after a massive explosion at an industrial zone on the main island, as well as flooding. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
A loving partner shouldn't take away your choices. Your choice of clothes, your choice to wear makeup and cut your hair. A loving partner shouldn't choose your friends or choose how you spend your time. A loving partner shouldn't control who you speak to. If your partner is controlling your choices, it's abuse. Get help now. Dial Tears *134 *7355# or visit tears.co.za. An SABC supported initiative.
Mamelodi Sundowns and Egyptian outfit Pyramids FC have collected maximum points in their Group A opening matches. They now tackle each other in search of victory. Masandawana want to ensure their visitors walk away without any joy, but Pyramids FC are confident they will upset the 2016 champs. This is the CAF Champions League. Roerkop battles it out with East Cairo. Experience the African flavor of the beautiful game. Mamelodi Sundowns FC versus Pyramids FC on Sunday 10 December at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the
The award-winning SAFM playwriting competition is back.
I remember a time when my grandmother, she would make sure that she never missed that story.
SAFM invites all writers to explore the medium of sound.
I mean, I remember Pipito, she remember all of those. It's like, what is this?
Yeah.
And it was fiction.
The theater of the mind. And to create a 1-hour radio play in English, get writing now and submit your play before the 22nd of January 2024. For more information, visit safm.co.za. Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
You're listening to The Talking Point. We're still leading the conversation on SAFM. We're looking at the top 2023 reads, and this is not according to any list, so don't benchmark me against New York Times bestseller or Exclusive Books bestseller or anybody else. We have just brought together a group of individuals that work and deal with books on a day-to-day basis, and we've asked them what their top 5 reads of the year are. You've already heard from Suela, who of course is the founder of Book Focus Capital Bookstore, and she's given us her list. Maggie Davey is a director and co-owner of Jacana Media. We're still going through her list, and then you'll also get to hear Daboro Mashiani, who's the leader, if I can say, of a book club, and she'll tell us what they've wanted to read in her book club. So, Maggie, we were still going through the list you gave us. So, we've touched on Winnie and Nelson, A Portrait of Marriage by Johnny Steinberg, Killing Thatcher, that's Rory Carroll, and Dinner Time by Dan Charnas. Is that correct, or Charnas?
Shyness.
Okay.
I've never heard anyone say it, yes.
All right.
Cathy, yeah. The other one, well, there's two. Rough Beast by Maria Cahill. I went through a phase of reading a lot about Northern Ireland this year, and that was one of them. And I think the time will come here, Suella, I'm sure you'll agree, when we will really excavate the kind of the gender, the violence, I suppose, during the struggle in exile and so on. And this book touches on it in terms of the IRA and suppression, really, of women in the broader kind of struggle for enlightenment and freedom, but yet suppressing women terribly. So, perhaps that will be written about here as well, if that's the case. But that was a very, very moving, very powerful book. And then the Mukaddima, I don't know, again, I've never heard anyone say it, so I don't know if I'm pronouncing it, Ibn Khaldun. And that might be a way of me telling you about a book that we've published, which is the Arabic Afrikaans writing tradition, by an amazing guy called Ahmed Davids. He's late now. He died a good many years ago. This has been edited by Hein Willemse and Suleiman Dangor. Hein Willemse has just retired as Professor of Afrikaans at University of Pretoria. So I've been trying to learn as much as I can about Islamic history, Muslim history, and so reading the Mukaddima came out of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. And it's also gotten really great reviews, the Mukaddima. If it's described as a monumental book, especially when it comes to the history of Islam.
Yeah, and I had no idea about it, so I'm learning as much as I can.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Maggie. All right, Deborah, let me come to you. You know that there's no pressure, right? And like I said, nobody has anything similar on their list. And similar by me, I mean, there's no common book, but I'm sure there's similarities in terms of the stories and what comes out of those stories. So, Deborah?
All right, I'll just name the 5, and then I'll choose, out of the 5, I'll say which were the best that all ladies agreed on.
Okay.
It was Angel's Demise by Sunyati, The First Woman by Jennifer Makumbi, Scarred by Ayanda Klaba, Finding Me by Viola Davis, The Death of Vivek Oji, and You Made It Full of Death by Nigerian-born author Akwezi. So one book that stayed with us and we had a book hangover was Angel's Demise. It took us a long time to get over it because the stories was so well written. It's about the fall of Zimbabwe and how from its independence to its current state and how it led to be the fall of the economy. And it's written through 3 generations of women. And Sue did such a great story in writing it because she could take us through each phase of Zimbabwe's change. And the stories felt so true and so relatable. And you could understand why what is happening right now is happening and the history and how similar it is to our history, to South Africa's history in terms of race and division. And the other one is The First Woman. We are a female-only book club, and we like to support women in all phases and factors. So The First Woman is really a book about women issues and women things that affect women. And you can say it's a feminist book, if I may put it that way. And there's the myth and the stories and how all these traditions, mainly African traditions that we have, mainly affect women more than men, and how patriarchy affects women in everyday life through school, work, families. So it was also a great book by Jennifer. And the other top three was God by Ayanda Xaba. This was an odd one because we've never read a crime series from a black woman. So it's a crime series based on a serial abuser who goes after women and abuses them because he has a kink, if I can call that, a sexual kink that is very that affects women in such a way that they trauma bond because of this certain guy. So it was interesting in the way that it's rare to find such books from black women in South Africa. I think most of the time we have the same narrative where we talk about our history, apartheid, and same old stories, which we appreciate. But this time it was different because now we're talking about crime.
Sure.
Crime scene is something totally different. So we really enjoyed Scarred and Angel Demise and The First Woman. And of course, Finding Me by Viola Davis is a nonfiction. Usually, the beginning of the year, we like in January, we like to take a nonfiction book that steers us. Maybe it's a motivational book or an autobiography. And it was good. It was great to read about her story and her challenges in a family and how she got out of poverty, which we could mostly relate to, and how race was affecting her, and we could draw similarities to how it affected our lives as women. And of course, on the lighter side, which is we never read romance. My book club ladies, they really don't like reading romance books. So we managed to sneak in one by Akwezi, and they enjoyed it. And we had different views about it. You Made It Full of Death and The Death of Vivek. And they write about homosexuality and how homophobia affects people living in Nigeria. And it was an interesting read, and it made us appreciate that we live in a good country. We have our laws, but mostly we have great laws that protect people,
Right.
and we have people living freely, in terms of being free to marry opposite sex or same-sex marriages and stuff. So when you read The Death of Vivek Oji, it made us remember that we live in a great country that has great laws.
All right.
Yeah.
Deborah, thank you so much for that rundown. We are almost completely out of time for this conversation. But I guess the moral of the story is that there's a little bit in it for everybody. So if you're determined to read, you will absolutely find something out there that appeals to you and that will be able to resonate with you. So I'm going to give each of you just 30 seconds as your parting shots to this conversation, and maybe remind us again why it's important for us to read. We all know that we should do it, but so many of us don't. Why do we need to keep the culture of reading going? Suela?
To escape, to grow, and to know who we are, and to travel beyond, your physical location. There's a festival happening this weekend, the Gauteng International Book Fair, where a local book lover can be spoiled for choice. Authors that even Tebogo mentioned will be there. So I think we should keep reading.
Where is the festival?
It's in Soweto, Ubuntu Kral, happening on Saturday the 9th, the whole day. I think tickets are just 100 Rand for everything throughout the day. Plus, there's a children's program.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm just agreeing with you. Absolutely. The book fairs are a good reason to keep reading. But I think that, they say that the better way of telling the truth about a situation, a country, a life is through fiction. So, that's fiction in particular. And so I know that we tend to favor non-fiction here in our country, in the country, but we have such great novelists emerging here, and we have a tradition of great novelists. But my gosh, every year sees a new batch of horizonless people, you know, and that's the beauty. And I just can't wait for all these novelists to come through.
Oh, fantastic. All right, that's where we're going to leave it for this morning. Suela, Maggie, and Dabo, thank you so much for your contributions on the talking point. That's where I'll leave it for today. We're back with you again tomorrow morning. Up next is, I suppose today it falls in line nicely, the book reading.
Get ready for an adventure of a lifetime with SABC TV Licenses Ultimate Competition. Feel the pulse-pounding excitement of a Bundesliga match live on an all-expenses-paid journey you'll never forget. Or embrace the rhythm of your dreams at the Coachella Music Festival. The choice is yours. A football fan's paradise or a music lover's haven. Simply pay your TV license, then head to www.winaholidaywithsabctvlicenses.co.za for a chance to win big. And don't forget, there are incredible weekly prizes up for grabs too. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
Sekhukhune United target a win in their own backyard against Stade Malien FC. Meanwhile, the Malian side refused to travel back home empty-handed. This is the CAF Confederation Cup Group D clash. Catch Sekhukhune United versus Stade Malien FC on Sunday 10 December at 8:30 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Polokwane City want to test if Kaizer Chiefs can handle the Limpopo heat. Their plan is to get a comfortable position in the top half. But the Kosi Nation is in a good mood to collect maximum points away from home. Rise and Shine versus Rise Kosi Rise. This is the DSTV Premiership. Polokwane City versus Kaizer Chiefs on Saturday 9 December at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The book reading. Please note the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SFM presents another episode of Simply Larry, read by Simpiwe Nkosi, written by Elias Masilela.
To my surprise, Larry has no recollection of any of this detail. All that he said in response to my narrative of what happened on the night was, "Really?" And he laughs out loud, the signature McDonald laugh. He goes on, "You've really got memory. I don't remember all that. Me? Praying in Latin? Nobody could understand that. It probably was a recollection of my entire life of understanding Latin. I probably said, 'The Our Father.'" He continued to laugh uncontrollably. Little did he know that this was not a function of good memory, but a deep imprint left by the tumult of the time and event. For me, it was my most precious lesson of thinking on one's feet and yet capturing the audience. It has also taught me to stay calm in the middle of a storm, no matter how big, and never to reveal any emotion lest I later regret it. These are lessons that have seen me well through many storms. The lesson would be further enhanced by exposure to another of my silent mentors, Trevor Manuel. He has the most amazing ability in oratory, particularly in the worst of times. Trevor, as we knew him and referred to him, retired holding the record of being the longest-serving Minister of Finance in the new South Africa post-1994 until he moved to head up the first National Planning Commission. Unlike his counterparts in other countries, he was comfortable being addressed by his first name by his team, to the shock and amusement of our counterparts in those ministries. This defined the relationship he had with his staff, identical with that of Inyoni and the boys. Trevor also taught me how to trust and delegate. He had a philosophy to effect that the best way to learn is being there when decisions are being made, even if you're an observer. This trait exposed me to yet another break in protocol, this time at the hands of Prime Minister Tony Blair. I had the unique and amazing fortune to represent South Africa at a Heads of State meeting in London to work on the African Renaissance, a program co-chaired by the Prime Minister and President Thabo Mbeki. Both the President and the Minister of Finance could not attend, so I had to stand in for them. The aim was for me to take notes and report back to South Africa. What followed, none of us had expected. The Prime Minister broke all protocol and recognized me officially as head of the South African delegation and accorded me more than equal treatment relative to the heads of state and ministers in the room. For every round of discussion, I was given the first right of refusal to lead. I was humbled and certainly embraced the breaking of protocol. These are hugely invaluable lessons for me, one which I will cherish for a very long time. Use your authority wisely and to empower. Chapter 17. Sister Act, The Whoopee in J.E. Sister J.E. Judith Ellen. With the lessons from this historic dinner and the relationship with the Brits, it is useful to turn our attention to Sister J.E. and who she really is. This is a woman, a nun, who was the mastermind behind the dinner and the bridge between the British and Swazi monarchies at the time. Not only that, she was also the magic link between Salesian and St. Michael's schools at various levels. This history would be incomplete without her. I was reminded of this fact by many old boys, as well as old girls of both St. Michael's and St. Teresa's. The latter was a surprise to me, as I never thought St. Teresa's old girls ever took notice of what was happening in Maigza, as St. Michael's was called then. Every time I spoke to these girls, now women, about the book, I got variants of the same question, always in very emphatic tones. What have you said about Sister J.E.? Note that this book will not be complete without her in there. I heeded their advice. They were right. Sister J.E. was instrumental to all our lives, including Salesian, irrespective of the distance. She was aptly described by one St. Michael's old girl, Pindi Riba, who together with another, Nununchingila, mobilized inputs from an impressive sizable number of girls when she said, she was liberal. Oh, maybe not so much that she was liberal, she was worldly. She was very astute and some